There's a number I used to dread more than any doctor's appointment, and it wasn't the one on the scale. It was the number on my meter, first thing in the morning, before I'd eaten a single bite of anything. Because no matter what I did the day before, good day, careful day, perfect day, that number climbed anyway, like it had its own plan that had nothing to do with mine. I'm Frank. I'm 83. I split my own kindling most fall mornings. I drive myself to church and back without a second thought, and when my grandkids visit, I'm the one keeping up with them at the lake, not the other way around. None of that was guaranteed for me a decade ago, and I'm not going to tell you what fixed it yet, because I want you to sit with the same confusion I sat with for almost 2 years first. I need you to understand how strange this was before I tell you how simple the answer turned out to be. Here's what I mean by strange. I'd eat the same modest dinner 3 nights running, chicken, vegetables, small portion, nothing dramatic. 2 of those nights, I'd wake up around 1:35. The 3rd night, same meal, same portion, same everything I could control, I'd wake up at 1:68. I couldn't find the variable. I started keeping a little notebook by the bed, writing down what I ate, when I walked, what time I went to sleep. For weeks, nothing lined up. The food wasn't the difference, that much I was sure of. If you've ever done the math and done the math and done the math and still come up short, you know the particular exhaustion I'm talking about. It's not the tiredness of failure. It's the tiredness of doing everything you were told to do and watching the result ignore you completely. A woman wrote to me not long ago. She'd been managing this for over 20 years, and she said something that stuck with me. "I've done it all for years and I'm still diabetic." That sentence carries a weight that has nothing to do with laziness. It's the weight of trying, honestly, and not being believed by your own body. And underneath that particular tiredness, there's something else, if you're willing to admit it. A little fear. Fear that maybe you waited too long. Fear that your body has simply stopped listening, the way an old friend stops returning your calls. I felt that fear plenty of nights, lying awake doing arithmetic that never came out even. I even started to wonder if the meter itself was faulty, so I bought a second one from a different pharmacy just to compare. They agreed with each other, morning after morning. That ruled out the equipment. It left only 2 suspects, something I was doing or something I wasn't seeing at all. My doctor, God bless her, had exactly 8 minutes twice a year to spend on me. 8 minutes is enough time to check a box and adjust a dose. It is not enough time to ask what happens between the hours no one is watching, between the time you fall asleep and the time your alarm goes off. So I went looking for that answer somewhere else, and what I found reframed the entire mystery for me. Turns out your liver runs its own overnight shift whether you're paying attention or not. While you sleep, it releases stored sugar into your bloodstream to keep your brain fueled until breakfast. That's not a malfunction, that's design. But researchers who study aging and metabolism have documented that this overnight release gets larger and harder to clear as insulin resistance sets in, which tends to happen more the older we get. It's called the dawn phenomenon, and it can push your morning number up independent of anything you ate the night before. That explained the mystery, partly, but it didn't explain why the same dinner produced 2 different mornings. If the liver just runs its own program every night, the number should have been consistent. It wasn't. Something was turning the dial up on some nights and not others. You do everything right. You eat clean, you take your pills, and the next morning that number is still too high. I know that frustration. I lived it for years. They never tell you about the morning rise, your sugar climbing while you sleep, no matter what you did the day before. You wake up, you test, and it feels like the work didn't count, like you're stuck depending on more and getting nowhere. I was done feeling powerless. I didn't want to throw out my doctor's plan. I wanted something natural and simple I could add to it, something that finally moved that morning number. I'll walk you through what changed it for me, and the natural support I add every day is in the free presentation linked below. The answer, when I finally found it, was almost embarrassingly small. It wasn't food at all. It was how well I slept, and more specifically, it was one thing I drank or didn't drink before bed. On the nights I woke up at 1:68, I'd looked back at my notebook and realized I'd slept badly, tossing, waking at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling. On the nights I woke up closer to 130, I'd slept straight through. That was the missing variable, not the chicken, the sleep. And here's the mechanism researchers have connected to that. Poor, shallow sleep raises cortisol, and elevated overnight cortisol signals your liver to release more glucose, which sends the dawn phenomenon into overdrive. Sleep badly, and you're not just tired the next day, you're handing your liver a green light to dump more sugar into your blood while you're unconscious and can't do a thing about it. So the one thing I changed wasn't a food. It was a small cup of tart cherry warmed about 45 minutes before bed. Tart cherry is one of the few natural sources of melatonin researchers have actually measured directly, and sleep researchers have documented that consuming it in the evening is associated with longer, less fragmented sleep in older adults specifically, the population most likely to have thin, interrupted sleep to begin with. I wasn't chasing a miracle. I was chasing a better night's sleep, on purpose, instead of hoping for one. The first week, honestly, I didn't notice much. The second week, my notebook started showing something I hadn't seen in over a year. 3 mornings in a row where the number matched, instead of swinging wildly for reasons I couldn't explain. That consistency, more than any single low reading, is what convinced me something real had shifted. But I want to be straight with you. 1 cup of anything, alone, rarely does the whole job. What made the difference stick was treating the evening as one connected routine, not a single trick. I kept my room a few degrees cooler than I used to. I stopped scrolling on my phone in bed because the light does something to how quickly you drift off that I underestimated for years. And I kept a short walk after dinner because researchers studying muscle physiology have documented that movement pulls glucose out of the bloodstream through a pathway that doesn't even require insulin. It opens a kind of second door for sugar to leave through, regardless of what your pancreas is doing that night. The cherry started it. The routine around it is what held. I also paid closer attention to when I ate my last real meal of the day. I used to eat dinner late, sometimes 8 or 8:30, then wonder why I felt keyed up in bed an hour later. Moving dinner earlier, finishing by around 6:30 most nights, gave my body a longer runway to settle before I asked it to sleep. Researchers who study circadian eating patterns have observed that eating closer to bedtime is associated with poorer overnight glucose control, likely because digestion and the sleep onset process are competing for the same resources at the same time. It's a small adjustment, moving dinner up an hour, but it's stacked with everything else instead of working against it. These days I sleep through most nights without waking once, and my mornings look almost boring now. Steady numbers, no surprises. I take my coffee on the porch most mornings before anyone else in the house is up, and some mornings I just sit there for 20 minutes doing nothing at all, which is its own kind of luxury when you've spent years bracing for whatever the meter says. If you watched this whole thing, you're not the type who gives up. You're the type who keeps looking for a real answer. So let me be straight with you. The morning number isn't your fault, and it isn't just diabetes. It's the dawn rise, and it responds to the right daily habits. The goal was never to quit your treatment. It was to support it naturally so you finally see that number move and feel in control again. Alongside the steps I showed you, I take a simple, natural support every day to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range. Affordable, easy, and it works with my doctor's plan, not against it. The free presentation is in the description below. Go see it for yourself. And keep your doctor in the loop. This is support, not a replacement. I think of Harold, a man I heard from after sharing an earlier version of this. 76 years old, retired mechanic, diabetic for 11 years, and, like me, completely stumped by why his numbers swung so wildly on nights when his diet hadn't changed at all. He told me he'd assumed it was random, bad luck. When he started paying attention to his sleep instead of just his plate, the randomness started making sense. Not overnight and not perfectly, but the swings got smaller, and smaller swings are easier to live with than mysteries you can't solve. I share his story not because 1 cup of anything is a cure. It isn't, and I'd never tell you that. But because the pattern is worth noticing. If your number is climbing some nights and not others on the same food, the answer might not be on your plate at all. It might be in how deeply you're sleeping while your liver does its overnight work, mostly unsupervised. Always talk with your doctor before changing your routine or your medication. This is meant to work alongside your treatment, not instead of it. Nobody should adjust a prescription based on a video, mine included. Here's what I keep coming back to. The people my age who eventually got some peace with this weren't the ones who tried the hardest during the day. They were the ones who finally looked at the hours nobody was watching, the ones between midnight and 6, when the whole thing is decided while you're asleep and can't argue with it. That's not a failure of willpower. That's just where the information was hiding. If any of this sounds like your mornings, good days that don't add up, numbers that swing for no reason you can find, tell me about it in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to keep learning what actually moved my number after years of guessing, subscribe, because there's more of this story still to tell.